Sometimes the change doesn't happen the day someone leaves. It doesn't happen after one conversation, one goodbye, or one final disappointment. It happens much later, quietly, almost invisibly. One day, something happens that would have once pulled you into hours of waiting, overthinking, or trying to understand. And this time, it doesn't. You notice it only afterward. Not because you were trying to heal, not because you decided to become stronger, but because your heart reached for a different place than it used to. That realization can feel strangely unfamiliar. For a moment, you even wonder if something is missing. The old reactions are gone. The urgency isn't there. The constant need to know what someone meant doesn't arrive. Silence no longer sends you searching for answers the way it once did. You expected healing to feel obvious. You imagined there would be a day when you would wake up and know that everything had changed. Instead, healing moved quietly through ordinary moments. It hid inside small decisions you didn't even notice. The conversation you didn't replay 10 times. The message you didn't wait for. The explanation you no longer felt responsible for giving. None of those moments seemed important on their own, but together they became a different way of living. Sometimes you look back at the person you were and feel compassion instead of embarrassment. You remember how desperately they wanted certainty, how every silence felt personal, how every distance became something they believed they had to fix. They weren't weak. They were simply carrying more than anyone could carry for very long. For a long time, you believed love meant staying available, staying patient, staying hopeful, staying long enough for someone to finally understand you. You measured devotion by how much of yourself you were willing to sacrifice. Leaving felt impossible because leaving felt like giving up. So you stayed. Even when your body had already begun asking for rest. Even when your mind repeated the same conversations every night. Even when the relationship existed more inside your imagination than inside your reality. At the time, it felt like loyalty. Now, it simply feels like someone who didn't know there was another way to live. The strange thing about change is that it rarely announces itself. It doesn't ask for recognition. It doesn't arrive with confidence. Most of the time, it appears so quietly that you almost mistake it for indifference. You stop checking your phone. Not because you're trying to prove something, you simply forget. You stop rehearsing conversations that never happened. Not because you've found every answer, because the questions no longer ask for all of your attention. You begin spending entire afternoons without wondering what another person is thinking. At first, you don't even notice. Later, you realize something inside you has been breathing differently for a while. Maybe that's why healing feels confusing. You expected yourself to become someone new. Instead, you became someone more familiar, someone quieter, someone who doesn't disappear every time another person pulls away, someone who can remain present even when nothing gets explained. That version of you isn't perfect. There are still days when old fears return. Certain memories still know exactly where to find you. Some silences still feel heavier than others. But they don't build a home inside you anymore. They pass through. Years ago, you would have believed this meant you were becoming colder. Now you understand that warmth and self-abandonment were never the same thing. You can still care deeply. You can still miss people. You can still love, without making another person's choices the center of your entire inner world. That might be one of the quietest changes healing brings. You don't stop feeling. You stop disappearing. And perhaps that's why this version of yourself feels unfamiliar at first. You've spent so much time surviving that peace almost feels like a language you forgot how to speak. You wonder if you've changed too much, if you've become distant, if you've lost something important along the way. But maybe what disappeared was never your identity. Maybe it was only the constant effort of trying to earn a place where you already wished you belonged. Without that weight, you naturally move differently. You pause less, you question yourself less. You no longer mistake anxiety for connection. The person you are becoming doesn't arrive overnight. She appears in quiet moments, in ordinary afternoons, in conversations that no longer leave you questioning your worth, in boundaries that don't require long explanations, in goodbyes that don't ask to be undone. Most of all, she appears in the moments when you realize you are no longer living from the same wound. Perhaps that's why recognizing yourself again feels so strange. You expected healing to create someone new. Instead, it slowly uncovered someone who had been waiting beneath survival all along. And maybe that's enough for today. Not to have every answer, not to understand every change, only to notice that you no longer walk through the world exactly the way you once did. Sometimes, that quiet realization says more than any explanation ever could.